Hello and welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV. I'm Dan and today we have player ratings. Chelsea drew yesterday to Brentford away from home 2-2, in which was another dire performance for Mauricio Pochettino's side. Honestly, when is enough with this manager? Things aren't going well. The toxicity yesterday at the G-Tech Community Stadium was horrific. It's the worst I've seen. There were finally calls for Pochettino to leave Chelsea Football Club, and they weren't polite, let's put it that way. But we need to look at the players, we need to get into it and talk about what ratings they deserve. To be quite honest with you, if we went 6 across the board, I don't think we'd be far wrong, because it was a pretty bang average performance. But let's get into it. But before we do, I just want to remind you all that today's video is sponsored by Match Bingo. Match Bingo is a great way to bet responsibly on the football. You get a bingo card with events that might happen during a football game. It could be yellow cards, it could be goals, it could be fouls, anything like that. If you manage to tick all of them off on your bingo card with similar rules to how bingo normally is, you will win up to £175 off of just a £2 bet, and you're limited every game to £10 only. So it's a really, really good way to bet responsibly. Make sure to download the app in our link in the description down below. Remember to gamble responsibly and make sure to read the terms and conditions that do apply. Remember, the link is in our description down below. Okay, yesterday we saw Pochettino play Chelsea in a 3-5-2 sort of formation. It was a little bit more flexible than that at times, but that's pretty much what it was. We had wing backs, we had 3 at the back, and we had a pretty uneventful second half, which meant that we ended up switching it up eventually. But let's get into the team, because Petrovic returned in goal, which was big for me. If he hadn't returned, that would have been very, very questionable on Mauricio Pochettino's head. Now, Petrovic did let in 2 goals, but he's a lot more confident in goal. The defence seemed more confident with him in goal, and ultimately we look like a better side. I'm going to give Petrovic a 6. I feel like he couldn't do much about the goals he conceded. They were close. Wissers was almost spectacular. He was trying that all game, to be honest with you. I think that was his 3rd bicycle kick that went in eventually. So, yeah, look, he couldn't do too much, and he didn't do too much wrong, to be honest with you. He had some shocking defenders in front of him. Let's move on to the back 3. We had Chalobah, Disasi and Chilwell. Chalobah occupied the middle space, and then Disasi to the right and Levi Colwill to the left. I feel like Chalobah was the best of a bad bunch. I'm going to give Chalobah a 6. I feel like his return to the team's been okay. It's not been anything special or much to write home about, to be honest with you. But I genuinely think we might start to see a bit more of Trevor towards the end of the season. I feel like the mistakes yesterday that we saw from the other 2 centre-backs, he's starting to look like he might be in a better shape than them currently at the moment in terms of his defensive capabilities. But it's not great, but he wasn't at fault for anything. So I think a 6 is fair, and we'll probably see him play a bit to push that price tag back up for a sale in the summer. That's my opinion. We saw Disasi on the right. Now, Disasi had a game that shocked me, to be honest with you. He made a lot of mistakes. He looked complacent. He looked off it. He almost looked like he was asleep for one of the goals. And then out of nowhere, he pops up in the box to get an equaliser. And I think with his physicality, he should definitely be getting more goals. I feel like he could be a real handful in the box. So it's good to see that. And I'm glad that he scored. And he kind of tried to make amends for his mistake, which I like about him, because I think he's a warrior. I think he's a fighter. However, the complacency's come into question again, and a bit of inconsistency, which we did see over that Christmas period with him as well. So, to be honest, because of his goal, it probably bumps him up from a 4 to a 5, and I'm going to stick there, to be honest with you, nothing more. Moving over to the left of the centre-backs, Levi Colwill, this was a strange one for me. He really struggled, and I feel like he's been pretty competent recently, and I wonder if the back 3 system kind of shocked him in Disasi, but he had a lot of trouble dealing with Onyeka coming towards him through the midfield, and outright, I think it was Rorslev, the guy who ended up scoring. Levi struggled with that. He didn't really know who to occupy, and I actually think maybe Ben Chilwell didn't help this situation, because he was a little bit questionable defensively as well, but Levi Colwill didn't deal with things that well yesterday, and ultimately a couple of his mistakes led to chances and opportunities for Brentford, which they eventually ended up capitalising on. So I'm going to give Colwill a 5 as well. I don't think he was that great, and it was a disappointing game for him and he obviously ended up coming off as well and was the player that got subbed for us to switch up the system. We saw Malo Gusto at right wing back, which I feel like is a position he could wander into very easily if you ended up playing three at the back more often than not. And first half, he was exceptional. He provided the width in the team, probably the only width we had in the team in the first half, to be honest with you, or pretty much all game. He was exceptionally energetic. He runs an awful lot. His recoveries were good. I feel like he was the main reason Chelsea were creating any opportunities in the first half, really. Him and probably Enzo. But ultimately, it comes down to an assist that he got, which was fantastic. The whip on that assist, the height, the angle, the speed, it allowed Jackson to manoeuvre into the perfect position to score a wonderfully timed header. And honestly, I think Malo Gusto deserves a 6 for his performance. I think he was very good. I think the one thing I'll say is it's evident to see that he is getting tired in the game as it goes on because he's playing a lot of football at the moment and there isn't really much replacement for him, at least to his quality as well. So he's looking a little bit tired and a bit jaded as the game goes on. Let's move on to the midfield. Enzo Fernandez was our playmaker in that midfield system yesterday. In the first half, he got on the ball. He was able to dictate play. His progressive passing was really good. I was excited with what I was seeing from Enzo. I feel like we haven't seen that enough under Pochettino. Come second half, though, Thomas Frank and Norgard teamed up to obviously work out a way to stop what Enzo was creating. And honestly, they nullified him. Norgard put him in his back pocket. Every time Enzo was in a position to receive the ball in the second half, Norgard got in front of him, was able to prevent that pass ever coming or completely screened Enzo out of the game. And that ultimately was what happened. Enzo drifted out of the game big time in the second half and he really wasn't involved too often. He almost ended up occupying a position out towards the left wing to try and get the ball in behind that Brentford midfield, and it just didn't work. And ultimately, he got dragged in the end on 71 minutes, and from a really good first half, the second half was dismal and brings that rating down to a 5 for me. I was pretty disappointed, and off the back of the first half, he could have been looking at a 7 if that continued. So, a bit of a shame. We move along to his midfield counterpart. Often, the player who we feel like is the partner in his pivot is Moises Caicedo, and this is a player that I'm really starting to see the benefits of in our midfield for sure. Yes, there was a couple of moments yesterday that still have question marks over them, but I'm seeing the quality and I'm seeing what he adds, and I'm starting to see similarities in what N'Golo Kante once offered us. And look, I can't compare the two players. They're not even close at the moment. But in the squad and the role he's picking up, there are similarities, but I genuinely think he has qualities where when pressed, he's exceptional. He's very, very good, and we're starting to see that a bit more. He's starting to build up a bit of confidence. Where this defence are now playing him the ball in tight areas in the midfield, he's now able to turn and play out and resist the press that's coming onto him. It's nice to see. It really is. However, there was a moment for the goal when he goes in for a tackle. His foot wasn't in there strong enough. The ball kind of bobbled over him and ended up leading to a Brentford goal where Disasi was sleeping. And yeah, look, not good. Not good in that sense. And I think that's something, obviously, that he'll learn from. But there was a moment as well when Brentford were on the counter-attack, and 9 times out of 10, you'd be asking for your holding midfielder to pull that man down, take the yellow card, and kill that attack. Caicedo backed himself. He got in front of that player, won the tackle, and allowed Chelsea to break. And it was a really, really good counter-attack that I think led to a corner. And for that reason alone, I'm going to back him and I'm going to give him a 6. I know that mistake's not great, and I know he ultimately hasn't done too much yesterday, but I'm seeing evidence of a player that's getting better, and I'm trying to get behind him. So a 6 for me, but he probably dropped off a bit after that goal, if we're being fair. Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher was an interesting one yesterday. Personally, in the first half, I would say he was pretty ineffective. I really don't think he did too much. I think he didn't get in the game. The 3 at the back system didn't really suit him, to be honest with you. The way we had the ball in the areas that we had it, Conor isn't effective in that sort of system. When we saw Conor become effective, it was later on into the game, to be honest with you, when we switched it up back to a back 4 and we saw Conor carrying the ball forward. We saw him driving Chelsea up the pitch, providing the energy that the other players didn't have, and that's why he's getting the minutes and the game time he is under Pochettino. And for me, that's invaluable. And I genuinely think Conor Gallagher probably deserves a 7 for that reason. I think he didn't have his best game, but ultimately it probably part of him led Chelsea to getting the momentum to get that equaliser that we needed. And I rate that big time. I really do. And that's why he probably gets a nice rating from me. Moving out to the left, we've got Ben Chilwell. Ben Chilwell was questionable yesterday. Ben Chilwell was in arguably his best position. He was a wing-back that we've seen him have a lot of success at Chelsea in that position. He ultimately didn't really create much width. He didn't create many attacking chances. I feel like his creativity was really limited, and defensively, he was questionable. He really was. I think his defensive lacks yesterday caused Levi Colwill some extra trouble, and a pretty poor defensive performance for Ben Chilwell and a pretty anonymous game going forward leads me to giving him a 5, and he's probably at the lower end of a 5, to be honest with you. It's not good, and I'm concerned. I don't think he's been the same player since that return from injury. I really don't, and I'm hoping that he can stay fit and get back to that level, but he seems a long way off right now. The one thing I will say about Chile is he shows the fight. That is the one thing that he does do. It's just I feel like there's limitations to his game at the moment. Let's move up to the strange sort of front two situation that we had. And this was weird for me from the off because Cole Palmer was obviously occupying that false 9, sort of maybe 10 role that we've seen Conor Gallagher pick up and him pick up. And I just never really saw that as a role that I think he excels in. And I don't think that worked yesterday, to be honest with you. It definitely wasn't one of his better games in a Chelsea shirt. I think his contributions were pretty limited. I think actually second half they were when we switched it back up to a 4 and he kind of could pick up a more familiar position. Then he got his assist from the cross that led to the Zassi's header. An average game for Cole Palmer. I feel like he really does need to work on his weak foot. His right foot could lead him to becoming a world-class player. If he had the ability to go both ways, I genuinely think we'd be having serious conversations about Cole Palmer. He's obviously been the bright spark in Chelsea's team this season, but he could get to an even higher level. I really think he could. I'm going to give him a 6. I think he got the assist, and there's never too much to knock in his performances, but it's how much better could they be. Let's move on to Jackson. Jackson had a mixed bag of results yesterday, really, to be honest with you, in terms of his goal scoring. He missed an open goal with no defender in sight, and he hit it so tamely and so effortlessly that it ended up rolling towards the goal, and a defender got back and cleared it off the line. I saw him put a couple of step-overs together, and the ball ended up going over his head. And I was thinking, here we go again. Jackson, he's going to have one of them days. Then out of nowhere, I saw him turn his Didier Drogba-esque like movement on, and he heads the ball into the back of the net exceptionally well. Off a fantastic cross from Malo Gusto. He runs over to the Brentford fans and he's shushing them. He's giving it the big one again. And I genuinely think he must think he's world class. He really must think that. But he scored a good goal. He's on 11 goals this season, and he was a bit of a handful yesterday. But as the game went on, he did look tired. He looked like he wasn't able to keep up with the play. He wasn't creating too many opportunities for the players that were behind him, Mudryk, Gallagher, Cole Palmer, Sterling, to ultimately find him in and around the box. It wasn't really happening, to be honest with you. And I feel like he wasn't a goal threat for a late spell in the second half, to be honest. And that's a bit of a shame. Maybe he's not a 90-minute man. What I will say is, because of the goal, and he did well in moments, I'm going to give him a 6. I think that's a fair rating for what happened in that game. Missing an open goal is never a good thing, to be honest with you, for a striker that ultimately needs goals. Let's look at the subs. We saw Mudryk come on in the 10 role that he sort of had. He didn't do much. to be honest with you. He didn't have an impact on the game. He took a couple of corners. They weren't very good. He ended up resulting to short corners, which ultimately led to a goal. He used his pace a little bit to beat players, but then his touch isn't very good. It wasn't a great cameo, and I feel like for the time he was on the pitch, he could have had a better impact, and he didn't. I'm going to give him a 4. I didn't see enough from Mudryk yesterday in the time that he was on the pitch. We saw Sterling come on about 10 minutes after Mudryk, and I feel like he had a bit more of a positive impact. I feel like he come on to booze, which I think is ridiculous. I just don't think that should be happening, but I'll give Sterling a 5. He had a positive impact. He should have scored, but he got himself in that position, which the likes of Mudryk just isn't doing at the moment. And for that reason, I think he gets a 5 and Mudryk gets a 4. I don't think anyone else came on, if I'm being honest with you. If I've got that wrong, I apologise, but I think we might have only made 2 subs yesterday. And again, if I could rate the manager, he'd be on a 0. But look, if you're liking the player ratings, let me know. I will keep them coming after every game on the Chelsea Fan TV channel. Make sure to thumbs up the video, drop your ratings in the comments down below, and subscribe if you're new. And I will catch you in the next one.